I can't do these things without showing my hometown off. And this is Trondheim, Norway. It's a picture. Now, I will say right away, I just have pictures. I stole them all online, completely legitimately, just shamelessly. But you see the northern lights or the aurora borealis above the city, and that's kind of one of the things that I think helps shape Norway and some of the things that we've done in our folklore and our traditions. I also want to say I can't do this without saying I am not an expert on Norwegian folklore, on Norwegian fairy tales, or anything like that. So all I'm providing today is my personal interpretation of what it is all about, and I think that's kind of the important piece. And so one of the things I'm going to start talking about, or actually the thing that's going to be the theme today, are trolls. And so, Katie, could you put that one in there? I'm feeling. See, this is cultural appropriation right here. This is really one of those things that makes me cringe when I see these things and they call them trolls, because trolls are like this. This is Nøkken. The painter is Kjell Kittelsen. He's a pretty famous Norwegian painter who painted a lot of the trolls. Nøkken is a creature that lives in freshwater lakes, and he is up to no good. That's the general piece. A shapeshifter tries to get you to the bottom of the lake where you might succumb. And one of the things that this helps with, or helped with, I should say, was this idea that, as kids, you could get scared, so you wouldn't be going out and swimming at night. And that's going to be one of the themes, is that nothing good happens at night in Norway. And that's the other part of it. But talking about trolls, this is more a Norwegian troll, right? This is how we see them, because the trolls in Norway are indeed a part of nature. They only come out at night. And if they see sunlight, they become to rocks, they become to mountains, and that's part of what has shaped us. And so this place here is called Torghatten in Norwegian, or Torghatt. I thought at first it was Torg as a city square, but it's the location. It's called Torg, I think, and it's the northern part of Norway. And it's actually easy to see if you have it in daylight, because it's the same one. You see the shape is almost that of a hat, and you see the hole right in the center. That hole right in the center is there because, so there's a legend about this mountain and the other mountains that are around, and so I got to go through, and I had to do cheat sheets, and as I did cheat sheets, I figured out that, as with any kind of folklore, depends on who you listen to, what exactly happened. But what's undisputed is that there was one troll that chased after another, who had also ran away with her 7 sisters. So the way the whole thing started is that we had 2 big trolls in the northern part of Norway. They were Vågakarlen and they were Surliskongen. And both of them had kids. It's the only thing they agreed on, because other than that, they were fighting over who had the best kingdom or had the best region that they were in charge of. Vågakarlen had a son, Hestmann, which directly translated means the horseman. And then Surliskongen, the king of Surlis is what that means, had 8 daughters. One was Lekameya, and the other one is just collectively known as the 7 sisters, and we'll see that in a second. Anyway, the 8 daughters decided that, well, they were not allowed to go swimming, not so much because of Nøkken that we saw, because this is ocean, this is salt waters and fjord areas of Norway, right? But like I said, nothing good happens at night, and even though the trolls could go outside at night without having to worry about sunlight or anything like that, they were banned, or they were not allowed to. So they snuck out. These girls, the 8 girls, snuck out to go swimming, and as they snuck out, Hastman, the horseman, came and he saw them, and he saw that one of them Lekamea was really, she was exactly what he was looking for. And there was no stopping him. So he charged after them, really after her, but all of them obviously got spooked and started running. The seven sisters, they fell off fairly soon. They were kind of done. We'll take a look at them in a second. But he wasn't interested in them, so he kept chasing Lekamea, all the way until he got close to where this is. He realized he wasn't going to be able to catch her. The sun was about to come up, and so he took his bow and arrow, and he kind of strung up the bow and kind of fired the arrow at Lekamea. Luckily, Sömnakongen, another king, another troll king, cool figure, we have a lot of them, right? Threw his hat to protect Lekamea. And that hat is this hat right here, pierced by the arrow, and as it landed, sun came up. And so we have the Toykotten, that's there as a formation. All the other things that I talked about, Vågakollen, Surdiskongen, Hastman, and Sömnakongen, they're all mountains as well. But then you also have the seven sisters. And here they are, all seven of them. And Theodor Kittelsen, who I just showed you the picture that he painted of Nøkken, he decided he was going to kind of do an artistic representation of them. So this is how all seven of them are. And so you have the twins in the center. So if I go back for a second, you see the twins right here, and then the rest of them are really fitting in with those, with that story, with those sisters. And really, that's what a lot of things are about when it comes to trolls in Norway. It's not cute, not at all cute, I should say. It's anything but. So they show up, and they show up in a lot of fairy tales. I know all of you know at least one of them, and that's the Three Billy Goats Gruff. That is a Norwegian fairy tale. Norway had. So in Germany, you have the brothers Grimm, right? They collected fairy tales. Now, they didn't really do too much. They just had people send them to them, from what I'm understanding. They didn't necessarily travel. In Norway, we had two guys, Asbjørnsen and Mo. They decided in the 1800s, you got the romanticism was happening. Everyone was all about, we got to find out what's really ours. And in Norway, that was these stories. So they traveled the country to collect them, and those collections are well worth reading. They are really fascinating stories about trolls, and they're a little, they go a little bit far sometimes. They're somewhat violent, and not always the friendliest, but what's fairly common is that the trolls tend to be not the brightest. They're somewhat dim, and they have bad eyesight. And so when I was introduced to trolls or to fairy tales in Norway, this is from a movie, an animated movie that was made in the late 60s. There's a Norwegian animator named Ivo Caprino who made a lot of the fairy tales into animated movies, and this is from one of my early favorites. It's Askeladden, or the Ash Lad, who had an eating contest with a troll. Now, this all happened. So Askeladden always he's someone, the Ash Lad, somewhat similar to Cinderella in many ways. Like Cinderella was always the cinder part came from the ashes and all of that. And the Ash Lad, he was the youngest of three brothers. Now these were regular brothers. There was no step or any drama like that with them. They were just regular brothers. But he was always curious, and so he used to dig in the ashes to try to find things. That was kind of his thing. So whenever they went out on adventures, there were a ton of different ones. He's always the last to go. You had Per, who was the oldest, and then you had Paul, who was the second oldest, and then Espen, the Ash Lad, was the youngest. And so, with this story, as with any other story with them, they went out and they were going to do something for their father, the king. And so they were going to go out and they were going to chop wood. That was the goal. Now, there are trolls in the woods of Norway. There's just no way around it. It's just a fact of life. And so this troll came when they were there. He came to say, you know what, you can't do this. Go home. And of course, Piet and Paul were both scared and they ran home. The thing with Espen, or the Ashlight, is that he always had some smart way of handling things. And so he grabbed, when the troll came for him, he put his hand in his backpack and felt around. What he felt was cheese. And so he pulled the cheese out of his backpack and told the troll, which, like I said, not the best eyesight in the world, this here's a rock and watch what I can do to it. And then he squeezed it until the whey came out of the cheese. And so the troll was like, wow, you're strong. Well, I gotta be careful. Well, how about you come home with me for a little bit? So of course he came home with the troll. And the troll said, well, I need to make some porridge. We'll have a good meal. I'll make good porridge, but I need some water. Why don't you grab those buckets and take them to the spring that we have out there, the wellspring, and fill them up, and that way we can have something to eat. And he looked at those buckets, and they were gigantic, right? They were huge buckets. There's no way that little scrawny guy could lift them up. But he had an idea, so he told the troll, well, you know what? How about, instead of getting those buckets, because that's a lot of work if you have to do that all the time, and they're just tiny buckets anyway, how about I go and fetch the wellspring to you, and I pull the wellspring here instead, so you'll have it right in. And the troll said, oh no, we can't have that. I don't want water in my little cave here. So he ran out with the buckets and got water and came back with the water, and all of a sudden they had the porridge, right? And I said, well, how about we make this interesting? How about we see who can eat the most? And you see there's a slight size advantage for the troll, right? just tad. And but here's the key part. If you look carefully right here, you'll see that he has his backpack on his stomach, right? And so they start eating the porridge, and so as he starts eating the porridge, he starts pouring some of the porridge into his backpack, and he keeps eating, and the porridge goes both in his belly and in his backpack. He makes sure that it looks like he's actually eating it too. And he starts, the troll's like, wow, I've never seen anyone eat so much. And the Ashlight said, well, you know what? I can do one better. Let me do this. He pulls out a knife and he cuts a hole in the backpack, and the porridge falls out, and said, now I can eat more. How about you do the same thing, troll? Because you know this would be great. So the troll, not the brightest in the world, takes the knife and he cuts himself open and he dies. And so the Ashlight gets a chance to run away with all of the gold, all of the things that the troll had, and came home and became the hero of the kingdom again. And that's this is a fairly typical Norwegian fairy tale in many ways, where the outsider is the one who comes up with the clever ideas. And the one thing with the Ashlight is he's always humble as well. So whenever he meets someone, he's never one to brag about how great he is. That's what Piet and Paul do, and they always fail. And it's kind of part of the Norwegian culture, part of the Norwegian soul in many ways. So the question then becomes, where's all of this now? And to me, I started thinking about this, and I started thinking, you know what? This is right outside where I grew up. My hometown is behind those hills that you see there. Actually, my parents live right up here now. That's right where I lived the second half of my youth. We moved further out from the city. This road would take me to my grandma's house. Although I'm showing it the other way, but I didn't have to say that because you wouldn't know any better anyway. But one of the things that you can see is that where I grew up, there isn't a ton of tall mountains. Like, this is not really high. This is more hilly side, but it's all granite, right? So there's so much rock. And so for this road that goes out to my grandma's house, there's not much room on the side, and there's not much room on the other side either, because you have to carve it out and in the side of the hills, more than mountains, but you always see that rock. You always see the rock faces coming. And then there's this one spot on the way out to my grandma's house. It's a tunnel. It's not a long tunnel. It's not a scary tunnel. You blink and you miss it, right? But every single time when I went out to visit my grandma, with my cousins that sometimes would go with us or with my sister. We'd sit in the back seat and we'll make up story about what the troll is doing right now because there is a troll in there. There's no doubt. There is definitely a troll in there. And so we used to drive through, and I swear to you, I could smell the pancakes it was cooking for breakfast. I know those things happen. There was bacon, there was a lot of stuff in the air, and the trolls they were active. This troll had kids, and trolls also, they have to have kids too. And so sometimes the trolls might very well have tried to put their kids to bed. And that brings me to one of my favorite memories as a kid, one that I try to carry on to my kids as well, and that is the Troll Mom's Lullaby. And it's not very long, and you'll have to you have to excuse my voice, but it goes something like, it's a lot easier when you sing to your kids when they're little, because they're not critical at all, right? Now I'm like, this is an audience, this is scarier, but it goes something like this. Når trollmor har lagt sine 11 små troll og bundet dem fast I svansen, da synger hun søtt for de 11 små troll, de vakreste ord hun kjenner. Ai, 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 poff. Ai, 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 poff. Ai, 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 poff. Poff, poff, ha! Poff. Ai, 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 poff. Sorry about that. I messed that one up. So the song goes, when the troll mom is putting her 11 kids to bed, she's tied them up with their tails. She sings the sweetest word she knows, and that's where "Oi, ai, ai, poof" comes. It doesn't mean anything in Norwegian either, but that is the song. And I think that's what I have. It's shorter than I should have been.
That's wonderful.
But I want to take you all the way back to my hometown again, and then see Norway by night. So that's part of what we do.
All right, yay!